All right, welcome into today's show. I'm joined by BBQ Mike out of Indiana. That's what he goes by, BBQ Mike. It's Mike Robertson. Glad to have you on the show, Mike. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about your journey. We always start with journey. I know you're doing competitions. You mentioned before we started recording that you got a competition this weekend up in Wisconsin. How'd you get into all this craziness that we call competition barbecue or just barbecue in general? How'd you get into all that?
Well, I'd say about 2015. I had no idea what like smoking food was. I just knew what a grill was. Say about 2015, my buddy introduced me to like an offset. He had I don't even remember what it was. He had an offset smoker. Gave me his old electric one, and then we were talking about doing catering stuff. So me and my dad decided we were going to build a pit. So before I think what was it? Before we got done with it in 2017, my buddy passed away.
Mm,
So then So then we found out about a local competition. I tried it, didn't do so good at it. And then in 2020 was when I did my first KCBS one, and I've just been hooked ever since.
there you go. So really on the now, did you start with KCBS? Did you start on the pro side? Did you go backyard, or what happened there?
It was just just a last minute thing. One of
Yeah.
my buddies did it on the pro side, and I just did the backyard thing. It's a money thing. It's expensive, as you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So are you still 3 years in? You're still in the backyard, or have you gone to the pro side?
Have not gone pro. I only did 4 competitions last year, and then I think I have 6 in so far this year with 2 left to go.
Gotcha, gotcha. So for our listeners, Mike's got a pretty good sized following on Instagram. I think your hashtag, or excuse me, your username is barbecue Mike, right? BBQ Mike, is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, super simple. So go check him out on Instagram, follow him. Are you on Facebook as well?
My wife does a Facebook page.
Yeah,
Me not on there, just Instagram.
gotcha. So in terms of your how you're viewing barbecue, you're competing on the backyard side. You're doing about what 6 to 8 competitions a year. Is that right? Somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
roughly, yeah.
Now, are you trying to build your business on the catering side? I know that was something you talked about early.
Me and my wife kind of we're starting to do that, but then
Yeah,
I'm just focusing on doing competitions. Hopefully, one of these years I can try for points chase.
there you go. So how are you balancing all that, right? So I'm assuming you've got a full time job, right? Because we all know competition barbecue doesn't pay much,
Yeah,
so it's hard to make a living. So you've got the competition side, 6 to 8 comps a year. You've got trying to grow that catering side plus your full time job. Talk about balance. How do I get that question a lot, right? I get that question from a lot of people trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I balance all this? And the short answer, in my opinion, is maybe you can't. So,
yeah.
what's your take on that?
It's rough, especially with my job. I'm a truck driver, so I work Sunday
Yeah.
through Thursday, but I typically don't get home until Friday morning. So when it's competition time, I don't get a lot of sleep. There's times I'll sleep in my truck. I'll drive. I went to Minnesota. That was a 6 hour drive. I slept in the front seat of my truck for that one. It's rough.
Right.
My wife puts up with a lot too. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's important to have, for those that are getting into competitions, it's important to have the support from your significant other, girlfriend, wife, whatever it may be. You need to communicate. I think that's really, really important. Um, I learned the hard way. I didn't communicate very effectively. Of course, I didn't know what I was getting into either. But it is a commitment, especially like you said, Mike, you're driving 6 hours one way. So, you got to get there. I usually get there at around noon on Fridays. I know some of the real serious guys getting there on Thursday.
mhm.
And I'm probably like you. We get there Friday at noon and we're leaving right after awards. I mean, you know,
Yeah, especially if you have a long drive ahead. You just want to get home.
you want to get home. Do you have kids?
I do. He's 22 though, so
Okay, so now
yeah, he's got a full time job and stuff.
is he gonna follow? Is he gonna follow in your footsteps? You think or no? The
I
barbecue
don't. I,
footsteps.
I don't think so. No, he's into cars right now. So
There you go. Well, that's a hobby that that's one hobby that is more expensive than competition barbecue. I finally found one. Well, tell us about your setup. What are you cooking on? What are your cookers when you're? We'll talk about at home first, and then competing. What are your cookers?
so at home, if I'm doing like something for long hours, I got a Lone Star Grill cabinet smoker. I
Yeah.
have a Traeger, and then I have that Blackstone flat top, which I don't use that thing at all. But for the competition side, I run gateways. I got
There you
two
go.
gate.
The gateway drums. Drums are always fun to cook on. They're just it's a completely different kind of cooker. And of course, you got the Traeger pellet grill. That's a different kind of cooker. It's amazing just how many. I mean, you could ask 100 barbecue guys what the best cooker is, and you're gonna get 100 different answers, right?
Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah.
It's always a fun debate. So you're running drums at the competitions now. Backyard, you're doing basically everything except brisket, right? Is that correct?
Some of them will have pork butt in there, but typically it's just chicken and ribs.
That's what I thought. So you've got so easy enough, right? You got two cookers, chicken on one, ribs on the other.
Hmm.
Now, non-competition, right? So if you're just cooking at home, what's your go-to? I mean, are you a rib guy, chicken guy, brisket guy? I mean, what's your favorite thing to cook at home?
Pretty much anything I can get my hands on.
There you go. Now, do you do sides too, or just the proteins?
My wife does sides,
Yeah.
so
So business wise, what's do you guys have a name for your catering business? Is it just Barbecue Mike, or is there something else?
it's just barbecue, Mike. Like I said, we're not really focusing on the catering side right now. I just want
Right.
to try start building up on the competition scene.
Build up. So is the idea then for you, because I know you've got a pretty decent following on Instagram, you put out some good stuff. So the idea then is to kind of get some what's the word? Get some notches on the belt, so to speak. Get some experience on the competition side, build up some credibility, and then start to build that catering side. Is that kind of your mindset there?
Eventually down there. I mean, we've talked about opening up like a barbecue shop because
Yeah.
around I'm driving. If I need something last minute, I got to drive 2.5 hours. So there's nothing close around here. Ace Hardware sells some stuff, but they don't have everything I need.
So you're talking about like a barbecue supply. You'd
Yeah,
open up a
yep.
barbecue. Gotcha. Gotcha. Which is, it's funny you mentioned that. There's really not, I'm in the Augusta, Georgia area. There's not, as far as I know, I mean, you've got Ace, of course, you got Academy, but
Hmm.
outside of that, there's not a true barbecue supply house in Augusta, which is, I mean, Augusta's not Atlanta, it's not Charlotte, of course, but it's a big, it's the second largest city in Georgia. You would think there'd be a barbecue supply house. Maybe that's my next business venture. I don't
Hey, there you go. Yeah, I know.
know.
Uh, Cotton Gin, he just opened up in I think was it Niles, Michigan. That's still 2 hours away from my house. So I mean, I don't know. I need to find something.
So as far as when you got into the competition scene, I think you said 2020, which is right in COVID, right? Which was always fun. How did you learn? Did you take a class? Did you buy some online videos? Did you watch YouTube? What was your how did you even figure out how to build a box and all that stuff?
So the first non KCBS that I did, I think, was in 2018. I met a guy there that competed for a little while on the pro side.
Sure.
So he worked with me a lot on as far as like boxing and all that stuff goes. And I don't know, he goes with me every now and then on Father's Day when he can kind of his wife let him out from the restaurant. So we
Right.
do that we've done that in the past 2 years out in Morris, Illinois. But yeah, he's that dude showed me a lot.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up because if you think back, at least from what I'm told, right? I'm 40 years old. So 30 years ago, I was 10. I had no idea about competition barbecue. But from what I'm told, 30 years ago, and probably 20 years ago, you know, the learning curve was steep when it comes to competition barbecue, right? There was no, 30 years ago, I mean, there was no YouTube, there was no Google, there was no online classes. So it was extremely steep learning curve. Now, and this is one thing I love about the barbecue community, and you touched on this, is the relationships that you build and the amount of help that people are willing to give you. Well, with a caveat, right? The caveat is when you start beating them, then they then they stop
Yeah.
helping you. So, but I think it's super cool, and I'm curious to hear, kind of your experience with the barbecue community. What's that been like, in terms of helping you along this journey?
It's amazing. I mean, everybody's there to help everybody out, if they
Yeah.
need it. Like my first competition I did last year, I'm trying to build my box. Didn't have a clue, what I was doing by myself because I always had that guy with me. I look over at my smoker and it's like 600 degrees. And then when I stood up, I knocked my box over, all my kale, everything went all over the ground. And that's when this one guy, Brian from Weeze's Groove and Barbecue, came over and gave me a hand, helped me build my boxes and stuff. It's just that's what you're there for. You're there to help everybody. Even though you want to win, you're still cheering everybody else on.
That's right. That's exactly right. So how have you fared? You talk about winning, and how have you fared in terms of placing and getting calls in your career so far?
I'd say I'm pretty consistent. I don't think I've ever been out of the top 10.
Yeah.
My chicken is, geez, anywhere from second to sixth place almost. It seems like every competition. I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but it's just
No, it's
I'm pretty consistent. I've gotten two reserve calls. I got one this year and one last year. First place ribs. Did a rib cook in Yorkville. Was it Labor Day? A couple weeks ago. I got ended up with the second place rib call. So I think I'm pretty
nice.
consistent.
Now, are you doing in terms of chicken? Are you doing thighs or drumsticks?
I'm doing drums. I don't have patience for thighs.
It's funny. I found that there's you have two very distinct camps when it comes to chicken, right? You've got, and there's really not a whole lot of middle ground. It's either they love drumsticks or they love thighs, and there's no gray area,
Yeah,
And I think it's just what you're comfortable with, what you learned on. I started with thighs because I bought some videos, some online videos from Robbie Royal because he's big down in Georgia area, South Georgia especially, um, and he cooked thighs. So that's the reason we cook thighs.
yeah.
Of course, you might go to a class and they're cooking drumsticks, and so you might be doing drumsticks. Now, I know you said you're growing the catering side of things. I know that's pretty much just kind of in the infancy stages, not a whole lot of focus on it. But are you having people reaching out saying, "Hey, can you cook for my kid's party, or can you cook a pan of pork or stuff like that?" Is that happening or not yet?
Every now and then somebody will ask us to cook something. Like today, since my wife's company, one of our sponsors, I made a bunch of pork for them for today. So,
Perfect. Yeah.
but yeah, every now and then we'll have somebody reach out wanting pork or, everybody wants brisket, but then they don't want to pay for it.
They don't want to pay for it. What's brisket prices like up your way? So you said you're about 2 hours from Michigan. So you're North Indiana. You're in the northern part, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I'm probably about 40 minutes outside of Chicago on the northwest side. So brisket
Okay.
prices are stupid for like a choice brisket is still 80, $90 from Costco.
Wow. Wow. So you're talking then probably almost $6 a pound
Yeah.
at that point. Yeah. We're pretty lucky down here. They Kroger for whatever reason puts. In fact, this week they had them on sale for 2.99 a pound. I've seen them as low. And 2 years ago, I saw them as low as 79 cents a pound.
Wow.
Um, and I think I may have bought every one that Kroger had at that time. Um, so, but it's always interesting to me to hear the difference in meat prices across the country. And you got to California. I was out there for a Famous Dave's competition in August, and you go into a Costco out there, and they've got an entire section just devoted to tri-tip. That's it.
Yeah.
And I've never seen so much tri-tip in my life. And it's funny because they literally had an entire you know cooler section with prime, tri-tip, and choice, and then they had a little tiny at the end. This little tiny, probably I don't know, 4 foot wide section for brisket. It's just, those guys out there don't cook brisket. They cook tri-tip. I always found it interesting how the different parts of the country. I'm from the Midwest, St. Louis. A lot of people like ribs, right?
Yeah.
Kansas City ribs. What's it like where you are? Is it kind of a? I know you said people are asking for brisket a lot, but is there one that stands out up there?
Not that I know of. I mean,
Yeah.
personally, us we like ribs. My wife likes my chicken wings, but yeah, as far as like something a protein that stands out, I can't think of anything.
Now, are you on your ribs? Now, obviously, for competition, you're probably cutting them down, or you're buying them St. Louis cut. I don't know anybody. I mean, I guess by the letter of the law, you can turn in spare ribs. I don't think that's against the rules, but I don't pretend to know all the KCBS rules. I have not read that manual. So, just to be clear, but if you're cooking ribs at the house, are you doing the full spare ribs, or are you cutting them down to St. Louis?
I'm still cutting them because if I'm cooking at the house, I'm still treating it like a practice cook.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was going to be my next question. So, are you devoting time to practice, or or when you cook as if you're cooking in competition?
Last year, I was doing practice cooks like the week before a competition. I haven't done that this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, like what you said, if I'm cooking at the house, I'll treat it like it's a competition.
Now, are you doing the whole nine? Are you injecting the ribs and all that, or are you just trimming them down and seasoning them?
I inject it, then
Okay,
the last injection, I'll put like in a Ziploc bag and let them marinate for a little bit.
there you go. All right, so let's camp out on chicken and ribs then. And I don't want you to give away your trade secrets. We're not talking about competition, but let's talk about when you're cooking at the house, right? So, and really, what I'm going for here is the folks that are listening that are just getting into this, trying to figure out, because I mean, think about it, there's thousands of different rubs. I mean,
Oh,
there's so many, and you get almost information overload. You go online, what's the best rub? Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, it's just, so for you, if you're cooking at the house or you're cooking for, family, friends, whatever, coming over for the ball game, whatever it is, how are you cooking the ribs? What rubs you're using? What injection are you using? Talk to us about that.
so the rubs that I stick with are from Loot and Booty and the Real
Yep.
Man Meat. That's all I use. Every now and then I'll add some JDQ into it, just depending on where I'm at. But for the most part, I'm just using Loot and Booty and the Real Man Meat. And as far as
There you
injection,
go.
I think I've been using Cosmos pork injection this year.
Yeah, Cosmos is like it seems like as far as injections go, Cosmos is a major player. I don't know how much market share they have, but I would suspect they got the lion's share of that market. They're everywhere.
Oh
It's
yeah.
hard to In fact, I would even say that it's hard to walk into a barbecue trailer or a barbecue truck and not see, well, two things. You're definitely going to see some kind of blues hog of some
Hmm.
sort.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And you're probably going to see a Cosmos in a bag of injections somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
So Loot and Booty. What was the other rub you talked about?
The Real Man Meat. I use
The real man meat. Yeah,
the home style and his
there
KC
you go.
style.
Casey style. So Loot and Booty, real man meat. We'll have those links in the show notes for our listeners so they can look at those, buy them if you want. Again, I would encourage our listeners, experiment. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different combinations, there's so many different rubs, and you're gonna get 1,000 different opinions on what's the best one. I think the one thing that I realized very quickly, and this is I learned this from Robbie Royal. If you flavorize, tenderize, and moisturize the meat, doesn't matter what it is, it's
Hmm.
going to be good. It's going to be
Yeah.
good, and you know that's it. It's going to be good. So I wouldn't if I'm just cooking at the house, or even if I'm a competitor and I'm getting into it and I want to go to backyard or pro, I don't know that I would overanalyze it too much.
Yeah.
You can absolutely overanalyze it, and what I would say over season it because you've got 17 different rubs. I'm speaking from experience, right? Because I
Yeah.
did that. So it was a little too much overload. So let's talk about words of wisdom though, as we kind of wind things down. You kind of got introduced to barbecue, I think you said 2016, 2017-ish
Yeah.
timeframe. Then you started competing in 2020. So you're about 3 years in. For the listeners that are taking this in and going, okay, I want to jump in, I want to do a backyard. And to be clear, let me step back for a second. I'd highly recommend if you wanted to get into competition barbecue, you start with backyard.
Oh yeah.
It's simple. It's usually two meats, sometimes three, like you said, cost effective. But there's some great teams. I mean, there's a lot of
Oh
great
yeah.
teams in backyard. I think there is a misconception out there that because it says backyard versus professional, like there's still great cooks. There's
Oh
still
yeah.
like
Oh
it's
yeah.
not all really. I know this is gonna get some people riled up, but it's okay. It's my podcast. So so at the end of the day, the professional side is just simply paying more money.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, you're spending more money. Now the payouts are higher,
Oh yeah.
but your cost, your overhead is also much higher.
Exactly.
So you got to weigh that. And you talked about, the financial side of that on the front end. And that's what I would, you know, encourage the listeners to say, hey, look, just try a backyard. Here's the other thing, not to go down a rabbit trail because I want to come back to the question, but compete. You talked about some non-sanctioned events that you did.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think some of the best people I've ever met in barbecue were at a non-sanctioned event, where they had four teams. That's it. But still had a lot of fun,
Oh yeah.
and I would just encourage, don't shy away from those, I guess is what I'm saying. So enough of that. We'll get back to the question. So words of wisdom, right? So really, if you're speaking to somebody that is a barbecue enthusiast, right? They love cooking at home. They love cooking outside over wood, charcoal, whatever. And they say, all right, I want to get started in this competition realm. What what does Barbecue Mike say? What kind of advice is Barbecue Mike giving them?
Do it.
Do it.
Just sign up for one and do it. You're gonna have a
There it
blast.
is. That's right. And you're not, at the end of the day, you're gonna have a blast. You're gonna make some mistakes, but you're gonna
Oh
make
yeah.
some friends. And if you can, you know, I love what you said. Just do it. Just do it. It's like the Nike. It's like Nike. Just do it. Right. I mean, you know, your cost is relatively low, and you know You're going to make some friends. You're going to make some mistakes, but hey, you're going to have a blast. So,
Oh, yeah.
all right, one more time on your social media handles. I know you're big on Instagram. BBQ Mike.
Mhm.
That's your Instagram handle. Anywhere else on social media that our listeners can connect with you?
Facebook, like I said, my wife runs that one. It should be the same thing. BBQ Mike.
BBQ Mike. And what about any Twitter, TikTok, anything like that?
I tried the TikTok thing. I don't know if it's my age. I'm 43, and I don't get the reels thing. But yeah, it's just Instagram and Facebook for now.
There you go. Well, for our listeners, we'll have that. We'll have those links in the show notes so you guys can go follow all the cool stuff that BBQ Mike's doing. And Mike, we appreciate the time, man. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, pleasure. Thanks for having me.